Amina lived in a small remote village surrounded by dusty roads and fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Life in the village was quiet, but it was also very strict. People followed old traditions without questioning them, and everyone had to obey the rules even if those rules were unfair. From a young age, Amina had learned to be careful about what she said and how she acted, because she knew the villagers would judge her for the smallest mistakes. Yet despite all her caution, nothing could have prepared her for the day her life changed forever. When Amina became pregnant, she felt a mixture of happiness and fear. She had dreamed of becoming a mother, imagining the soft touch of tiny hands and the sound of laughter in her home. But she also knew that in her village, women who gave birth were not always celebrated, and the type of child they had could change everything. Amina tried to focus on the hope and joy of motherhood, keeping her worries hidden even from herself. Months passed, and the day finally came when Amina gave birth. It was a long and exhausting labor, and she felt every moment of pain as if it would never end. But when the cries of two tiny babies filled the room, Amina felt a wave of relief and love. She had twin baby girls. She held them close, feeling their warmth and fragile hearts beating against hers. For a moment, the world felt right. She whispered to them softly, promising to protect them no matter what. Her happiness, however, was short-lived. The villagers who had gathered outside to see the newborns were not pleased. In their eyes, girls were a sign of bad luck. Amina had hoped that her family would celebrate the birth of her children, but instead they looked at her with anger and disappointment. Whispers spread quickly through the village, growing louder with each passing minute. "Two girls?" someone muttered. "What will she do with them? They are a curse." The words were sharp and cruel, cutting deeper than any blade. Before Amina could even respond, the villagers acted. They dragged her outside where everyone could see. The punishment was cruel and public. They whipped her for bringing twin daughters into the world, shouting that she had brought shame upon her family. Amina screamed, both from the pain and the shock. She tried to protect her babies, holding them close to her chest. But there was no one to stop the villagers. She felt helpless, crushed under the weight of their anger and the fear of what might happen next. As the whipping ended, Amina lay on the ground, bruised and bleeding, her daughters crying softly in her arms. She looked around, hoping for someone to help, but everyone had turned away. Even her own family avoided her gaze. It was as if she had become invisible, a woman who had done wrong simply by being a mother to daughters. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not only from the pain in her body, but from the heartbreak in her soul. She had always believed that family would protect her, but now she realized that in her village, tradition and fear were stronger than love. Amina struggled to stand. Her body ached, and her mind was clouded with fear. She did not know where to go or who to trust. The village had become a dangerous place for her and her children. She whispered to her twins, telling them that she would keep them safe no matter what, though she felt unsure if she could keep that promise. She had never felt so alone in her life, and the thought of leaving the village terrified her. Yet staying meant facing more pain, more humiliation, and the possibility that her daughters would also be harmed. That night, Amina hid in a small corner of her home. She wrapped her daughters in the only blankets she had and held them close, trying to calm their cries. The moonlight streamed through the small window, casting shadows on the walls, but even the gentle light could not chase away the darkness in her heart. She thought about her life, about all the dreams she had, and about the future of her little girls. She knew that if she wanted them to survive, she had to leave. But leaving meant stepping into the unknown, a place where nothing was certain, and danger could be everywhere. As she lay awake, Amina remembered the stories she had heard about kind people who helped others in need. She clung to those stories like a lifeline, hoping that somewhere someone would offer her and her daughters safety. Her mind raced with questions. Where could she go? Who would take them in? Could anyone be trusted? Or was the world filled only with cruelty like the one she had just experienced? Each question brought another wave of fear, but also a spark of determination. She could not give up. Her daughters depended on her, and she would do anything to protect them. The following days were difficult. Amina tried to avoid the villagers, moving quietly through the small spaces of her home and stepping out only when necessary. She scavenged for food, cared for her babies, and tried to remain invisible. But even in hiding, the fear followed her. She could hear whispers in the distance, the judgmental eyes of people who had once been her neighbors, and the reminder that in her village, girls were not welcomed. Each day felt like a battle, not just for survival, but for her daughter's right to live without fear. Amina began to plan. She knew she could not stay in the village forever. She needed to find a safe place, someone who could help her, someone who would not judge her for having daughters. She thought about traveling to nearby towns or seeking the help of people she had heard about, but never met. The journey would be dangerous, especially with newborn twins, but the alternative was worse. She whispered to her daughters each night, promising that they would one day live in a place where they could grow up safe and loved. Despite her fear, Amina's heart was filled with courage. She remembered her own mother, who had taught her to be strong in the face of hardship, and her father's stories of people who had overcome great challenges. She realized that even though she was alone now, she could create a future for her daughters. Each tiny cry of her babies reminded her why she had to keep going. She held them tightly, feeling their warmth and imagining a life where they could smile, play, and grow without fear. Amina's determination grew stronger each day. She knew that leaving the village would be the first step toward freedom. She gathered what little she could carry, making sure her daughters had enough food and blankets for the journey. Her hands trembled as she packed, but she refused to let fear control her. Every item she packed was a promise to her children that they would survive, that they would find a better life beyond the walls of cruelty and judgment. On the night she decided to leave, the village was quiet. Amina stepped out into the cool night air, clutching her daughters close. The stars shone above, distant and bright, like tiny beacons of hope guiding her way. She did not look back. Each step she took was a step toward freedom, toward safety, toward a future where her children could live without fear. The road ahead was unknown, and she did not know who would help her or what dangers awaited, but she knew that staying was no longer an option. Amina walked through the darkness, listening to the soft breathing of her daughters, and felt a mixture of fear and hope. She had survived the cruelty of her village, and now she was determined to find someone who would see her daughters not as a curse, but as blessings. Her journey had begun, and though it was filled with uncertainty, Amina knew that as long as she held her babies close, she would never give up. She would fight for their lives, for their future, and for a world where girls could live without fear. For the first time since the whipping, Amina allowed herself a small sense of hope. Somewhere out there, she believed someone kind awaited, someone who would offer shelter, protection, and understanding. She whispered again to her babies, "We will be safe. We will find a home." And with that promise in her heart, she continued walking into the night, carrying the fragile but powerful hope of a mother determined to save her children. Amina walked through the dark, quiet fields, her heart pounding in her chest. The night air was cold, but she kept her daughters close, wrapping them in the blankets she had brought. Every sound startled her: the rustle of leaves, the distant barking of dogs, even the soft wind blowing through the trees. She had never traveled alone at night before, and every step into the unknown filled her with fear. Yet she kept moving, driven by the thought of finding safety for her children. As she trudged along a narrow dirt path, Amina thought about the stories she had heard of kind people who helped strangers in need. One story told of a man who lived far from the village in a place called the ranch, who was known for his fairness and generosity. People said he had helped travelers, given shelter to the weak, and never judged anyone for the circumstances of their life. The idea seemed almost too good to be true, but it became her only hope. She decided that if she could reach this ranch, perhaps she and her daughters could finally find safety. Hours passed, and the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Amina was exhausted. Her legs ached, and the twins were restless, their soft cries breaking the silence of the early morning. She paused by a small stream to rest and let the babies drink water from a bottle she had carefully carried. The reflection of her tired face in the water made her heart ache. She had endured so much already, and the journey was far from over. Yet, as she looked at her daughters, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She would not let them down. After resting for a short while, Amina continued walking, following the narrow path that she hoped would lead to the ranch. The landscape slowly changed as she left the village fields behind. Rolling hills and open meadows stretched in front of her, and she could see distant trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. Though the scenery was beautiful, it did little to ease her worry. She was still alone, and there was no one around for miles. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound uncertain. Then, as the sun rose higher, she saw something in the distance, a figure on horseback moving steadily along a trail. At first, she thought it might be another traveler, but as the rider drew closer, she realized it was a man. He looked strong and tall, with a serious but calm expression. His horse moved gracefully, and he seemed confident in every motion. Amina felt a mixture of fear and hope. She did not know if this man would help her or turn her away, but she had no choice but to approach him. As she walked toward him, the man noticed her and slowed his horse. He observed her carefully. Her disheveled clothes, the tired look in her eyes, and the tiny babies wrapped tightly in her arms. His expression softened as he realized the situation. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Amina's throat tightened and tears filled her eyes. She could barely speak, but she managed to whisper, I need help, please. My babies." The man dismounted and approached her slowly. "I am Elias," he said. "I live nearby at my ranch. You can come with me. You will be safe there." Amina hesitated. She had been betrayed so many times, hurt by people who should have protected her. Could she trust him? Her heart raced as she considered her options. Yet, looking into his eyes, she sensed a genuine kindness she had not felt in a long time. Finally, she nodded and said, I will come with you." Elias helped her onto his horse carefully, making sure the babies were secure in her arms. As they rode together through the fields, Amina felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. She glanced at the babies who were sleeping peacefully and whispered to them, "We might finally be safe." Elias rode beside her, offering encouragement and keeping a careful watch on the path ahead. For the first time in many days, Amina felt a small sense of hope. When they arrived at the ranch, Amina was amazed. It was a large, peaceful place surrounded by tall fences, green pastures, and well-kept buildings. Horses grazed calmly in the fields, and the sound of flowing water added a sense of calm to the surroundings. Elias led her to a small, comfortable house on the property. "You will stay here," he said. "No one will harm you or your children. You can rest and recover. I will make sure you are safe." Amina stepped inside the house, still holding her daughters tightly. The rooms were clean and warm, and the soft sunlight streaming through the windows made her feel safe for the first time in weeks. She could hardly believe it. After everything she had been through, the whipping, the fear, the endless hours of walking, she had finally found a place where she and her daughters could be protected. Tears of relief ran down her face as she whispered to the babies, "We are safe now. We are really safe." Elias left her in the house to rest, promising to bring food and blankets for the babies. Amina lay down carefully on the small bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion press on her. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to imagine a life where she did not have to fear cruel villagers, where her daughters could grow up healthy and happy. She thought about the future, and for the first time in weeks it seemed bright and full of possibilities. Over the next few days, Amina began to recover. Elias visited often, bringing food and checking on her and the babies. He taught her how to care for the ranch and offered guidance when she needed it. Amina was hesitant at first, unsure of how to live in this new place and whether she could truly trust anyone again. But Elias's patience and kindness slowly made her feel at ease. She realized that he had no judgment, no harsh words, and no expectation except that she care for her children. Life on the ranch was not easy at first. Amina had never lived in such a large place before, and there was much to learn. She had to feed the animals, gather water, and keep the house clean while caring for her newborn twins. Each task was difficult, especially with her body still recovering from the whipping and her mind weighed down by fear. But she faced each challenge with determination, motivated by her desire to give her daughters a better life. As the days passed, Amina noticed changes in herself. She began to feel stronger, more confident, and less fearful. The twins grew healthier, their cries becoming more playful and full of life. She laughed with them for the first time, feeling the joy of motherhood without the constant shadow of fear. She started to imagine a future where her daughters could play freely in the fields, learn without shame, and grow up knowing love instead of cruelty. Elias watched Amina's progress with quiet pride. He knew that she had endured terrible suffering, yet she was determined to rise above it. He offered support when needed, but never forced her to act before she was ready. His respect and patience made Amina feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. Slowly, she began to trust him, realizing that he was truly different from the people who had hurt her. One afternoon, as they worked together in the fields, Amina asked, "Why are you helping me? You do not know me, and yet you care for us." Elias looked at her calmly and said, "Everyone deserves safety and kindness. No one should be punished for being born, or for the children they bring into the world. You and your daughters deserve a chance to live freely without fear." His words struck Amina deeply. For the first time, she felt that someone truly understood the injustice she had faced and believed in her right to a better life. Amina realized that her journey was just beginning. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time she felt hope instead of fear. She had survived the cruelty of her village and had found a protector in Elias. With her daughters by her side, she knew that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. She whispered to the babies, "We are safe now, and we will build a life filled with love and happiness." The twins stirred in response, their tiny hands reaching out, and Amina smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. As the sun set over the ranch, casting golden light across the fields, Amina felt a quiet strength within her. She had escaped danger, found shelter, and begun to heal. She knew that life would still have challenges. But for the first time, she believed that she and her daughters could thrive. With Elias's support, she would learn, grow, and build a future where her children could live without fear. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the ranch and the gentle presence of her protector, Amina allowed herself to hope for a tomorrow full of possibilities. Life on the ranch was very different from anything Amina had ever known. The mornings were filled with sunlight spilling over green pastures, the sound of horses neighing, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Birds chirped in the trees, and the smell of fresh grass and earth filled the air. At first, Amina felt overwhelmed by the size of the ranch and the amount of work it required. There were animals to feed, water to carry, and chores that seemed endless. But despite the hard work, she felt a sense of peace she had never known in her village. Elias showed her how to take care of the animals and the land. He taught her to feed the horses, milk the cows, and gather fresh eggs from the chickens. At first, Amina struggled with the tasks, stumbling over uneven ground and making mistakes, but Elias was patient. He encouraged her gently, saying, "You will learn step by step. Nothing has to be perfect." His calm voice and steady guidance gave her confidence. Slowly, Amina began to see that she could do more than she had ever imagined. She could care for the ranch, care for her babies, and care for herself. The twins were growing fast. Every day, Amina watched them stretch their tiny arms, giggle, and explore the small spaces of their home. She laughed along with them, feeling a joy that had been missing from her life for so long. Their laughter became the soundtrack of her days, giving her the energy to keep going even when she was tired. She would hold them in the mornings while they nursed, humming soft songs she remembered from her childhood, and at night she would tuck them into their small bed, whispering promises of safety and love. Though life on the ranch was peaceful, Amina faced challenges. She was far from the village she had known, and everything was new. The routines were difficult to learn, and she sometimes felt isolated. At night, when the ranch was quiet and the twins slept, memories of the whipping and the cruel villagers returned. Fear sometimes crept back into her heart, reminding her that the world could still be dangerous. She tried not to let these thoughts overwhelm her, but they were a constant reminder of the life she had left behind. Despite the challenges, Amina began to find strength she did not know she had. Each morning, she woke with determination, ready to face the work of the day. She learned to care for the animals, mend fences, and cook simple meals. She discovered that she could manage more than she had ever believed. With each task completed, her confidence grew and she felt a sense of pride. She began to see herself not just as a victim of her past, but as a mother and a woman capable of creating a life for her children. Elias continued to support her, offering guidance when needed and stepping back when she needed space. He never judged her and he never pressured her to act faster than she was ready. Amina appreciated his quiet respect and began to trust him more deeply. She realized that he was different from the people who had hurt her. He saw her as a person, not as a shameful woman, and he treated her with kindness and fairness. Slowly, a bond of trust and respect formed between them, built on shared understanding and patience. One morning, Amina decided to take the twins to the pasture to see the horses. She had been nervous about letting them explore outside, but Elias encouraged her, saying, "It's safe here. They can learn and play." Amina watched as her daughters crawled on the soft grass, their eyes wide with wonder at the animals around them. They laughed when a horse nuzzled her hand and squealed when a chicken clucked near them. Seeing their joy filled her heart with happiness. She realized that she could give them the childhood she had always hoped for, one filled with safety, love, and freedom. Even as she enjoyed these moments, Amina knew that life on the ranch was not without danger. Travelers sometimes passed by, and rumors of her presence could reach the village she had fled. She worried that someone might come to harm her or her daughters. Elias reassured her, saying, "No one will hurt you here. I will protect you and the babies. This is your home now." His words comforted her, and she began to believe them. Slowly, the fear that had haunted her for so long began to fade, replaced by hope and determination. Amina also began to think about her daughters' future. She wanted them to grow up with education, freedom, and choices, things she had been denied. She started to imagine teaching them to read, helping them explore the world, and showing them that girls could be strong, capable, and valued. Every small action she took on the ranch felt like a step toward building that future. Even simple chores became meaningful, a way to create a safe and nurturing environment for her children. As the weeks passed, Amina grew closer to Elias. They would often work together in the fields, repairing fences, planting crops, or feeding animals. They spoke little at first, but gradually they shared stories of their lives. Elias told her about his own struggles, the lessons he had learned, and why he believed in helping others. Amina, in turn, shared her past cautiously, careful not to reveal too much too soon. Through these conversations, she realized that trust could be built slowly with patience and care. She felt a sense of partnership, even if it was unspoken, and it gave her hope that she was not alone in her journey. There were also moments of playfulness. Amina would teach the twins simple games, laughing as they stumbled and explored. She watched them discover the world around them, their curiosity and energy reminding her of the beauty in life. She would sing songs, tell stories, and encourage them to be brave, teaching them lessons she wished she had learned as a child. In these moments, the ranch felt like a true home, a place of warmth, love, and safety. However, life on the ranch was not entirely free from worry. Amina sometimes wondered about the village she had left behind. What would happen if someone discovered her whereabouts? Would her family ever forgive her? Or would they continue to see her as shameful? These questions troubled her, but Elias reminded her to focus on the present. "The past cannot hurt you here," he said. "What matters is your life now and the future you are building for your daughters." His words helped her focus on what she could control, and she gradually let go of the fears that had once consumed her. Through it all, Amina learned something very important. She was stronger than she had ever realized. She could care for her daughters, manage the ranch, and face challenges with courage. The hardships she had endured had taught her resilience, patience, and determination. She discovered that even in the darkest times, hope could survive, and that love for her children gave her the strength to continue. Each day, she grew more confident in herself and more certain that she could protect and nurture her daughters no matter what. By the end of the month, Amina's life had changed completely. The twins were thriving. The ranch was under her careful attention, and she had begun to build a routine that balanced work and care for her children. She smiled more often, laughed more freely, and allowed herself to feel joy without guilt. The fear that had once defined her life had been replaced by a sense of purpose and possibility. She had found a place where she could not only survive but also grow, learn, and dream. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, casting golden light across the pastures, Amina sat with her daughters in her lap. She watched the sky change colors, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. The twins reached out to touch her face, giggling softly, and she laughed along with them. In that moment, she realized how far she had come, from a frightened, injured mother running through the night to a strong woman creating a safe home for her children. The ranch had become a place of healing, hope, and new beginnings. Amina knew that the journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, new lessons to learn, and obstacles to face. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. With her daughters by her side and Elias's guidance and protection, she could face the future with courage and determination. She whispered to the twins, "We are safe, we are strong, and together, we will grow and thrive." The babies cooed softly in response, and Amina felt a deep sense of gratitude and hope. In the quiet of the ranch that night, Amina reflected on her journey so far. She had endured cruelty, pain, and fear, but she had survived. She had discovered kindness, trust, and the power of love. She realized that life could be difficult, but with hope, determination, and the support of others, even the darkest times could give way to light. And as she watched the stars appear in the night sky, she knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with possibilities, safety, and love for herself and her daughters.